everybody, and good afternoon from Oberlin, Ohio. My name is Scott Miller, and I am a member of the Board of Directors of Green Energy Ohio. It's my pleasure to welcome everybody today to our panel discussion around climate action and social good with a focus on electric vehicles. Green Energy Ohio is a nonprofit focused on the transition to a just and clean energy future. With the just and clean energy future comes economic vitality and social good. And so today's panel discussion is going to be particularly important for us to kind of round out our week's events. Just as a reminder, Green Energy Ohio is doing a week-long series of events focused on vehicle electrification around the state. We started yesterday in Shaker Heights, went to Kirtland, we were in Warren yesterday afternoon, Canton and Akron. This morning we were in Worcester. This afternoon we'll be back in Worcester, and the rest of the week, tomorrow we'll be in Dayton and Cincinnati, Athens, and rounding out the week in Columbus. We want to thank all of the folks who made this happen. We have had a wonderful, long planning event bringing all of these materials together for almost 6 months. Michael Peters, who will join us in a moment, is on our planning committee, and we would not have been able to make today's activities happen without Michael and the team at Sway Mobility. So we wanted to give a big thank you to Michael, to all of our sponsors, both our regional sponsors and our statewide sponsors who have made this happen. We want to thank all of you as well. And of course, those of you who are joining us on our live stream, we want to welcome you into the conversation. Thank you all for joining us today. We're looking forward to a wonderful discussion. And with that, I will introduce Michael Peters from Sway Mobility, who will moderate today's event. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Scott. And thanks to everyone who's joining us today and for all of our panelists today. We have such an exciting panel of experts in this field that it takes some notes, so excuse me for reading, which I hate doing in a public event. But the stop here highlights Oberlin EV Car Share. It's a first in the state public EV car share program that supports Oberlin's climate action plan, which we're going to hear a little bit more about in a minute, along with increasing access to public EV charging through Oberlin Municipal Light and Power, the municipal electric utility. We're also going to hear about the importance of increased transportation options serving Oberlin and Lorain County residents, and how all of these options complement each other in a county with long distances between cities, but with a willingness to try new and innovative approaches to transportation. Then we'll hear about the Paradox Prize Grant that helped to fund several of these initiatives, including a shared EV for Place to Recover and Catholic Charities St. Elizabeth Men's Homeless Shelter. We'll end by expanding our scope to Northwest Ohio as we hear about electrification efforts there, including the region's long history in transportation innovation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Oberlin City Council's President, Madam President, Linda Slocum. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for the invitation to be here today. Welcome to this Oberlin stop on the Green Energy Ohio Electric Vehicle Tour. The city of Oberlin has a rich history of social and civil rights leadership, beginning with its founding. It now continues to lead in the context of another generation-defining challenge, that is, climate change. As the former president of Oberlin City Council, Brian Burgess, wrote to the 2019 introduction to the third edition of the city's Climate Action Plan, Oberlin has a responsibility to think globally, but act locally. To that end, local government must ensure that every resident has safe and adequate housing, food security, transportation, and affordable access to reliable utilities. We do this with the understanding that fossil fuel use must cease and resource consumption be drastically reduced. So a sustainability resolution in 2001 started the city on a path of commitment to this challenge. In 2006, Oberlin College signed the American College and University President's Climate Commitment, which committed the college to become climate neutral by its current target date of 2025. In 2007, the city became one of the first Ohio members of Local Governments for Sustainability, known as ICLEI, initiating a greenhouse gas inventory and the development of a local climate action plan. The city developed its first climate action plan in 2011. This plan sets systematic goals of reducing 2007 greenhouse gas inventory emissions by 50% in 2015, by 75% in 2030, and below 10% by 2050. Through sales of renewable energy credits, Oberlin has been able to set up a sustainable reserve fund. And that fund identifies and supports projects that help us meet the goals of our climate action plan. Transportation is approximately 20% of our emissions. And so on April 1st, we started our EV car share program that you will hear more about today. It makes 2 electric cars available to residents. In addition to reducing emissions, this program allows drivers to begin to get more comfortable with the new technology. And that's what you'll be hearing about today, the nitty-gritty from the rest of the panel members.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This really goes to show you, a city like Oberlin really epitomizes how acting locally can really have a major impact. And we really appreciate that. Next, we're going to hear from City Manager Rob Miller.
Thank you, and I appreciate the viewers checking in on our, we believe, one-of-a-kind and hopefully one of many in the future, our EV car sharing program. As President Slocum indicated, the city is absolutely committed to environmental sustainability. We believe as a small town of approximately 8,000 people, that we can make a difference every day in every way. These efforts happen because of a committed community, also because of a dedicated staff. And you'll have a chance to see a couple of staff folks here in our presentation that'll talk about a variety of our other initiatives. But the SWAY program and the EV car share program allows for the reduction of carbon in our community. It also is intended to inspire folks, inspire the citizens to know that electric car sharing programs are a viable option. The city is supporting it, knowing that as everyone has a chance to drive and experience electric car experiences, from there they'll have a chance to then potentially invest, utilize, and actually draw the barriers down from a car share program. We can share, and that sharing does make a huge difference in carbon reduction in our community, in our state, in our country, in our world. I'm just very pleased to be a part of this. I'm pleased to introduce our staff who is committed, not only committed to transportation and the ways to reduce carbon emissions through that mechanism, but a number of initiatives in terms of housing, weatherization, looking at our water quality, and a number of initiatives that really do help our environment and our world. With that said, thank you. Appreciate your attendance today. Hope that you learned something as part of this process. And from there, we are learning as an organization to continue to look towards EV in our fleets, in our police cars, and our other modes of transportation to provide services to our community. So with that said, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to hear from really a critical piece of this, which is Oberlin has a municipal electric utility. So we're going to hear from the Director of Oberlin Municipal Light and Power, Doug McMillan.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm the Director of Oberlin Light and Power. We're a small city utility with big city aspirations, I like to say. We actually only have 3,100 meters here in Oberlin. 80% of our load is commercial customers. We do have 4 different divisions, so most small cities like this don't have that. So we have a distribution division, that our linemen that take care of all our overhead and underground lines. We have a technical services division that takes care of our substations, our SCADA system, all our metering, our automated meter reading. We have our generation plant. Oberlin has its own small generation plant here that provides for peak shaving opportunities for Oberlin to keep our rates lower here. Then we have the administrative division that we take care of all the paperwork, all those tasks, and pretend we manage what's going on in the other divisions anyway. The EV charging stations we got involved with in 2015. We installed the first one behind Old City Hall there. That station by 2020 had 10 times the usage, so the kilowatt hour sales increased tenfold over that 5 years. It's been a good increase we've seen here, and with the SWAY program, we installed 2 additional charging stations here. So we now have 4 ports available for public charging in Oberlin. Hopefully these will increase our sales and increase the usage of electric vehicles. We'll say Oberlin Light and Power was the first, one of the first, well, actually the first electric vehicle in Oberlin's fleet. And that, having that Nissan Leaf was a big step for Oberlin to take. And as we shared that with other departments in the city, got to use that and see how that electric vehicle worked and how substantial it was. The planning department, and they ended up buying another one a few years later because it was very beneficial. Perfect for a small city to use. We only had to charge it every few days. Plenty for the guys to run around. Reduced our fossil fuel usage and carbon emissions. So, thank you, and we look forward to seeing more EV charging stations and EV vehicles in Oberlin.
Thank you very much, Doug. I thought for a minute there we were going to get a lightning strike because it would have been perfect timing. The weather here is a little dicey, so if you see us running for cover, you'll know why. Next up, we have Director of Planning and Development, Carrie Handy.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today to talk a little bit about Oberlin and how we've been looking at our transportation challenges. About 2 years ago, we really started looking at how we could improve transportation for our residents. About 10 years ago, the county transit system decided to end regular daily service to Oberlin. And the community came together to provide 2-day-a-week service, and they've been doing that for almost 11 years now. But we knew that that wasn't serving people who needed to get to work on a daily basis, who needed to get to medical appointments, and just be able to travel throughout the county. It was very limited to the city of Oberlin with that 2-day-a-week service. So we started looking at how we could do an expansion of the transportation service, and also what other transportation we could bring into our model to kind of fill the gaps that we knew public transit couldn't necessarily fill. And that's where the electric car share program came into play, because we knew that that could help fill gaps at hours and on the weekends and things like that we knew we couldn't afford to have 24-hour public transit service. So with developing the model, which included 5-day-a-week public transit service from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and from 9:30 at night to 12:30 in the morning to hit second and third shift workers, and then the 2 electric cars that would be available all the time in Oberlin to help fill around those hours for transit. We decided to apply for the Paradox Prize grant at the beginning of last year, right before the pandemic hit. We went in that first round of the grants, and through that we were encouraged to work. There were a lot of other Lorain County projects, and through that first round we were encouraged to work with the other people in Lorain County who also had transportation needs. And you'll hear about how we brought in Catholic Charities and Place to Recover it kind of into our project to make a Lorain County project, which added an additional electric vehicle to our program, and the Paradox Prize grant actually does fund that. For those of you who might not be familiar with the Paradox Prize, It was a grant program specifically targeted to getting people to work in innovative ways. So it would pay for pilot programs, and there will be somebody to talk about that a little bit more here in the future program. But so we're in the process right now of the pilot, in the middle of the pilot. Things are going well. So we look forward to hopefully being able to continue all of those various modes within our program here in the future. We're looking at future funding sources right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. So next up, we're going to continue to talk about how in a county like Lorain, transportation is so important and critical. And so we're going to be joined by Sharon Pearson, who is Lorain County Mobility Manager, to tell us a little bit more about what's going on in the county and how this all fits in. Thank you.
Thank you. I am very honored to be here today. I just want to give a shout out to Green Energy Ohio. I used to coordinate the Green Energy Ohio tours here in Oberlin, and was also honored in 2017 or 2018 for my efforts coordinating that event. But I'm also a former city council person, was involved with the climate action plan and also the transportation section of that plan. I started in transportation because of my work at the Oberlin project. I was given this project of transportation and I knew nothing about it, and I had to learn everything on my own about transportation and how it related to sustainability. But one of the reasons why I stuck with this is because of the social justice piece and the fact that without a car here in Lorain County, it's really difficult to get a lot of places. Many of the job hubs, they exist in Lorain, Elyria, and especially Avon, and it takes about a half an hour to get over there. So if you do not have a car, you're not going to be able to have access to that. And I see that this EV car share program offers the opportunity for people who are low income to sit in an electric car that maybe they would not otherwise be able to, or use that car and have a chance of doing that. And this is something that's very special here in Oberlin. We're also finding through some transportation surveys that we have a lot of needs. People are really struggling with getting to grocery store, to medical appointments. And just this year, we launched another transportation survey, and we're finding for the first time that access to jobs is starting to rise to the top 3 on the list, and that hasn't been something that has happened before. Maybe this is because of the pandemic, but it's very obvious that having this EV car share program, having the Paradox Prize program that really links low-income people to jobs is very important. So I'm very, part of my job is to coordinate transportation options, to promote the options that exist. And as soon as I heard about the Paradox Prize, that is one of the projects that we began to promote to find solutions to transportation issues that we have here in Lorain County. And so I'm very proud to be a part of this, and look forward to continued work that Oberlin can do to inspire others throughout Lorain County regarding transportation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So we've heard the local perspective, we've heard the county perspective, and so now we're going to hear really from a regional perspective. So I'd like to invite up Dominic Matthew from the Fund for Our Economic Future. He's going to tell us a little bit more about the Paradox Prize and how a bunch of different organizations in Lorain County came together to apply for this. And as part of this, we're also going to hear from Wendy Caldwell from Place to Recover and Matt Peters from Catholic Charities who are participating in the program. Dominic?
Thank you, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dominic Matthew. I am a transportation planner with the Fund for Our Economic Future. The fund is a creative space. We foster new innovative ideas in the economic development space to advance equity in economic growth across Northeast Ohio. So we don't just work in Cleveland, we work across 18 counties in Northeast Ohio. The Paradox Prize really came out of the idea, the transportation paradox that a lot of our residents face out here. No car, no job, no job, no car. If you don't have a car, you can't get to a job. If you don't have a job, you don't have money to own a car. And this gets amplified once you get out of the urban cores of where we live, out of the Clevelands, out of the Akrons. Once you come into places like Lorain County, if, for instance, I use public transit or the Greyhound service to get to Lorain today from Cleveland, I would have started off at home at 5 a.m. in the morning and gotten here at 7 a.m. or so. And so it just makes things harder for people trying to get across county borders or even get across from Oberlin to Lorain or Elyria. And so when Carrie, the team, Wendy, Matt, Michael all came together with the idea of looking at transportation in Lorain County in a different light, this was exciting for us because one, the pilot right now looks at expanding coverage and service area of the Oberlin connector, and two, you have an electric vehicle car sharing program from Sway that's shared between Catholic Charities and Place to Recover. And I would love to have Matt and Wendy come in from both these organizations to talk about this particular pilot. But what we've seen till now, what we've learned till now is that introducing innovations in populations or communities who we think don't fit the bill for innovation can be truly transforming. We see, especially with electric cars, that we look at a certain class or a certain subset of the population who might end up using it. That's completely not true, and both of them would talk about what they're seeing in their pilots.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak about our experience with utilizing the electric car. My organization is P2R Training and Resource Center. I joined the transportation initiative with Let's Get to Work Lorain County for the Paradox Prize in last year, and then launched it in February of this year. And I have seen an increase of individuals being able to access resources that enable them to get employment, as well as helping people get to work on a daily basis. On top of we're saving energy, and that's just really important to me. It has really been difficult to get people to work and get them to become able to promote independence and able to get their own housing, to get to their jobs, to pay for resources. So this electric car share program has really benefited marginalized populations who otherwise would not be able to access employment or resources that help them get employment, like getting to the doctor and getting to interviews and getting training. So P2R Training and Resource Center has been able to utilize the car in that capacity. We've serviced over 15 employers have benefited from the car share program, and over 50 clients have utilized the car in some way, shape, or form. We hope to be able to hold on to this resource because it really has benefited Lorain County, and the actual charging center is at P2R, so we do get a chance to use it a little bit more than that, but we do share some of the same clients and some of the same issues. So with that, I give you Matt.
Thanks, Wendy. Yes. It's such an honor to be here. First, thank you so much to the Let's Get to Work Lorain Collaborative, which has been such a gift to be a part of, to Dominic, to Michael for letting us use the car, which has been tremendous, and to Wendy. So working with Catholic Charities, Wendy and I get to see, not that she's with Catholic Charities, but we're in a similar position in which we're helping people who are really facing at times almost insurmountable barriers, which is really what I see this grant to be all about, which is to get people who are essentially marooned, in poverty, in places that are economic deserts, transportation deserts. Wendy and I have gotten to see how having access to this car, helps in an immediate, kind of visceral way. Right away with access to this car, we're able to get people who are otherwise walking, riding bikes, or just not, fulfilling their obligations, to get them to doctor's appointments, to get them shopping, to get them to, social services, to get them to legal appointments, to get them to, appointments for housing, whether it be an apartment or a home, or whatever the case may be. So, now we're able to do that. And I can't emphasize enough how important that is to these people, how meaningful it is, how much hope it gives them to know that there's a network and a community of people around them who are bright and motivated and empathetic and concerned, and making this possible for them. It's been an ineffably huge gift. So thanks to everybody who's been a part of this. It's been a real treasure. When I first applied for the grant and first discovered the Paradox Prize, I sent in a request for just a small amount of money for a van, thinking this will solve our problems, this will be great. Dominic got right back to me and said, hey, you know what? I recognize your need. I want to put you in touch with this larger group. I think you guys have a common goal happening here, and lo and behold, here we are, and it's in motion, and it happened very quickly. So just tremendous props to everybody who made that happen. It's really cool, and it's made a big difference. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So it's been a real pleasure and an honor working with both Wendy and Matt. Whenever we have a setback or a bad day, these are the clients that we think about, and how we can not only help them but help their clients in turn. And it really, as a mission-driven organization, is really very impactful for us. So we've heard locally, we've heard about Lorain County, we've heard regionally about the Paradox Prize. Now we're going to move over slightly to Lucas County and Toledo, and we're going to hear from Dave Gideon from the Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Governments, which has the acronym of TMACOG, which is much easier to say and remember. So with that, Dave.
Thank you very much. Yes, as mentioned, my name is Dave Gideon. I'm the Vice President of Transportation for TMACOG, the Toledo Metropolitan Area Council of Governments. Rolls right off the tongue. We are the regional planning agency for Lucas and Wood counties in Ohio, and we also have the southern three townships of Monroe County in Michigan. So we do cross the state line, and we do transportation and water quality planning for that area. Our water quality area is slightly larger. They handle different issues. I head up the transportation side. I want to thank Green Energy Ohio for allowing some folks from Northwest Ohio to come and join the event. It's a pleasure to be here. And a few of the things that I wanted to talk about today are some of the things that Northwest Ohio's been doing, and then also to talk about some best practices and some things that we have done in Northwest Ohio to try to move the needle a little bit. Admittedly, Northwest Ohio has been a little bit behind the times on trying to bring the region up to speed on electric vehicle charging stations in particular, and getting a network in place. So one of the things that we did was take advantage of the Volkswagen mitigation grant money that was available, and we tried to push that out to our counties and local entities. And Lucas County was fortunate enough to get 11 charging stations through that grant. Erie County got one, and Ottawa County got one as well. University of Toledo was the biggest beneficiary. They've got 6 stations that are going to be going in on their campus, many in and around parking garages and structures, and others near some of the academic buildings. Our Toledo-Lucas County Port Authority was very proactive as well in getting 3 stations that are located at 3 of the downtown garages. So expanding that accessibility to people that go downtown. And City of Sylvania got one for their municipal parking lot. And there was actually an O'Connell Lodge in Holland, Ohio, which is on the west side of town, that got one for their facility as well. So taking advantages of programs like that has been a way for us to try to expand our network out a little bit. However, there's still a lot to do. One of the things that we do as a planning agency is the long-range transportation plan for our planning area. In the Cleveland area, NOACA handles that, the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency. They do the long-range plan. The plan is required to look out 25 years, so we handle that. So as a planning agency, it's part of our responsibility to not only look at what our roadway network looks like and make sure that we've got good roads, which is obviously important, but also making sure that it's multimodal and gives access to everyone. That we've got appropriate bike trails for people that want to bike or walk, both for recreation and transportation. That our transit system works. That our freight network is efficient so you can get goods around the area, through the area, and across state borders. And for us, also across into Canada is very important to us. So we look at freight, and we look at system preservation, We've got a committee that started up a few years ago that looks at, we originally called it the Autonomous Vehicle Steering Committee. We changed the name to be a little bit broader and take in issues like electric vehicles, connected vehicles, drone technology, unmanned flying units that are becoming more prevalent now and getting a lot more press. So things like that are all things that we are responsible to take a look at and incorporate into a long-range vision of what our area needs to thrive 25 years from now, and try to plan ahead for that. So one of the things that we're going to be taking a look at is putting together a plan as to how we can develop a network of charging stations in the Toledo area. Taking a look at where are the key locations where they need to be, making sure that they're able to get there, having a network that not only connects within Northwest Ohio, but also makes a network that crosses the state. So if you're traveling from Cleveland, say, into Toledo, you're not going to get stranded halfway across the state and you have nowhere to charge. Same thing going down south to Columbus or into Indiana or up to Michigan. So that's very important to us, and we don't have a network in place, and that's something we need to establish. So we're going to be taking a look at that. In terms of some best practices, some of the things that I highly advocate that anyone does, whether you're a grassroots organization or even a governmental entity that wants to try to expand out and get some of these programs in place. If you're a grassroots organization, get to know your metropolitan planning organization, your TEMACOGs, your NOACAs, your MORPCs if you live in the Columbus area. Get to know those folks. Get to know your governmental representatives. They're often fighting the same battles that you are, but coming at it from a slightly different angle. Believe it or not, you really are all pushing in the same direction, but you have to get to know each other in order to get across the finish line. If you work for a governmental entity, get to know your grassroots people. Establish those partnerships, because they're going to be the ones that are the community advocates that when you're going in front of your council or talking to your other county commissioners or your boards, the grassroots people are going to be the ones that will really help you sell it and make sure that you're spending the money in a prudent manner for your residents. So get to know your people around you. Research programs and funding resources. This is a kind of a growing area. There really aren't that many well-established resources yet for charging stations. I mentioned the Volkswagen mitigation grant that we were able to take advantage of in our area and across the state. But as new programs pop up, as new transportation bills gets passed, if the federal government passes a federal infrastructure bill, take a look in there and see if there are programs that are available to help you expand out some of these networks. Those are going to be some of your best sources of revenue for these things. Get projects into your region's long-range transportation plan. Whether or not it's something that you can implement in the next year or two, or it's something you feel like it's going to take 5 or 10 years down the road to do, make sure that it gets in the plan. It sets the long-range vision. It tells your community that that's something you're interested in and are dedicated to doing. So if it does come up, funding does become available, you can point to your plan and say, hey, as a region, this is something that we decided to do. We dedicated our resources to it, our planning dollars in the hypothetical sense of the plan. And it makes it a lot easier to get funding. You're selling it in the sense that the region has backed it. So I highly encourage you to work with your MPOs on getting projects in long-range transportation plans. If you go after funding, don't be afraid to hear the word no. It's going to happen. Oftentimes when you apply for grants, you're not going to get it your first time out. If you do, fantastic. You put together a solid application and it worked. But there are a lot of people competing for the same dollars, and there isn't enough money to fund everybody. So stick with it. Don't give up. Build your stronger coalitions and go after it again. Don't let the word no, knock you down. And try to work with your region to establish policies and initiatives that are getting you to your end goal. A couple of the things that we did as a planning agency, we did this for both water quality and transportation. We put together legislative agendas. We do this every 2 years. We just updated these last fall. We approved them in December. So one on the transportation side, one on the water quality side. Transportation is called Transportation Legislative Agenda for the Toledo area, and the water quality one is a little bit more focused. It's called the Agenda for Lake Erie, focused on more of the water quality, lake issues, algae issues, and so forth. We break this into a whole series of briefs, and I believe there are 9 of them, looking at freight rail, logistics, air, ped bike, passenger rail, marine, so forth. One of the sections that we have in here, and we titled this one a little bit more narrowly, but it encompasses broader topics, but one called Autonomous and Connected Vehicle Transportation Policy Brief. In here, we've established policies that our region is going to be pushing towards. One of our local priorities, establish a network of level 2 and DC fast charging stations to facilitate the broader deployment of all electric and hybrid vehicles. So when we set it in here, that basically establishes this as a regional policy adopted by our board, comprised of 120 local governmental, non-governmental schools, a broad constituency of agencies that adopted it, which means it's a policy of our region that we want to try to accomplish and build towards. So this helps set the blueprint for some of the things that we want to do and some of the things we want to see funded and move along as projects. So it's documents like this that we put in the hands of our area legislators, we put in the hands of our Board of County Commissioners, of our local council people, township trustees, anyone that can help us move the agenda forward. We give this to them every 2 years so that when we have new state representatives coming in, they can see what our local priorities are. We started this about 20 years ago or so with the main issue that when we'd have people from Northwest Ohio that went down to Columbus talking about various issues, one person would say we need X, somebody else would come down and say we need Y, someone else would come down and say we need something completely different. And the question that then got asked is, okay, Northwest Ohio, what do you really want? You're all saying something different. No one is saying anything that fits together as part of a plan. This is what we have put together and a tool we decided to use to be that vision, to be that plan that we can put in their hands, not necessarily the whole document, but one of the individual briefs that we may be going down to talk about. If we're talking about we need bridge money, we pull out the page that deals with that. So we're all saying the same thing. It's our note sheet. We can talk about any issue that we need to and all say the same exact same thing. Helps us look coordinated, helps us all push in the same direction. So those are some of the things that we have done on a planning agency level. Toledo is starting to do a few things that helps us to move in some other areas too, talking about access to mobility and transportation. We put in place a bike share program a few years ago. It's called Toledo Bike Share. Right now, I believe we've got 11 stations in place around the downtown area. We want to try to expand that out into some areas outside of downtown. COVID slowed that down. The program shut down completely. Instead of having people sharing bikes and potentially spreading the virus, the program was suspended. I believe that is now opened back up again. But it's things like that that help with mobility. You can rent the bike either by the hour, get a membership where you can use it anytime you want. But some people use that for recreation. Others need it if they want to, take a short trip downtown. Some people even use it to get to work. So things like that have kind of broadened out some of the transportation options. Trails have been very important to us as well, from the non-motorized side of things. Trying to establish a connected trail network is one of the things we've been very dedicated towards. And giving people the option of either riding a bike or walking. If they work close and don't want to take a car, they've got a non-motorized option that is safe for them, that they feel comfortable using. So on our environmental side, sustainability is a major issue for them. They've got programs in place looking at rain barrels and rain gardens and various water conservation efforts and efforts to try to keep pollution out of Lake Erie and stop our algae issue that has saddled Toledo for a number of years. So Toledo is starting to get a lot more progressive in how we look at sustainability, how we look at options for transportation, access to transportation. Our transit agency has gone through a major revamp over the last 15, 16 months with the new general manager. She's looking at things like electric vehicles where that hasn't been something the agency has looked at previously. Alternative fuel vehicles. I think they put in a application for some electric buses for the first time. So things like that, we're gradually moving in a more sustainable direction. It's taken us some time, but it's some of these efforts that I've talked about that really help set the stage for how we want to get there and some of the things that we want to do. So with that, I will wrap up. But thank you for having me, and it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. And on the live stream, thanks for joining me. And if you catch this later on YouTube, hope you found some of this interesting and informative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Sure, thank you.
So I think that we've heard from a lot of different organizations today, and I think someone like TEMACOG is one that a lot of people, frankly, outside of government realms aren't really familiar with. So a metropolitan planning organization. So as Dave mentioned, Northeast Ohio is NOACA, there's MORPC, there's Eastgate, there's several around the state. And the collaborative process with them often involves this long-range planning, but there are certainly monies that can go towards things like EV charging and even EV car share. So congestion mitigation and air quality grants, which again are planned for many years in advance, so you're not going to get this money tomorrow, but that money can be earmarked and used for EV charging and car share. So something to look into. So we've heard some great aspirational stories, we've heard some very practical stories, really a lot of information today. And so I'm really happy that we're going to end this with some historical perspective. So to wrap us up, we have Christine Senak, who's on the advisory board of TEMACOG, and she's going to discuss the electric vehicle boom of the late 18th and early 20th centuries and the lessons learned from these experiences that might inform our planning and placemaking today. Christine?
Thank you. It's just like teaching. You're all so far away, like you always choose the back. And of course, Toledo chooses the back row, where people misbehave. I'm Christine Senak. I'm also known as the girl in the glass city. Toledo is the glass city. So I am the girl in it. I go everywhere, do everything, cover the best people, places, and things. And I have been very, very lucky to have been sponsored by Yark Automotive Group for the past 10 years, in fact. Initially, that was with an internal combustion engine car. For the past 6 years, I have been driving a BMW i3. So out of all of you here, how many of you actually drive as your sole car an electric car? I want everybody to look around. There's 2 of us. The rest of you are making decisions for those of us that drive cars. By the way, this is not my formal presentation. This is my jump off of Dave's thing, because I kind of taught him this lesson, so I'd like to teach all of you this. Please ask people who actually drive electric cars before you decide that anything is a great place for an electric charger, because chances are it's not. Now, there are times when you and I have to deal with, oh, this is here because it's convenient, or somebody paid for it, or this happens to be where they could drop the massive line for a DC fast charge. Okay, we'll spend the next 45 minutes in our car, eating car snacks. This one's great. It's right next to a McDonald's. So whoever did this is great. So please, 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 and I know some of you are driving your first EV vehicle this week. By the end of the week, you'll know the challenges that we face with a sole EV as our car. So please, please ask people. If you don't know people, get on Facebook, find people, ask people who actually drive electric vehicles, where things work best for us. So you're gonna buy this next speech, so you got that one for free. So here, I'm here representing sort of Toledo, and I'm glad that you let us come in on your event here. I'm actually hoping maybe that I can convince my high school and college friend who lives here that we're going to Chez Francois, because I don't get out here that much, so I'm hoping she's going to say yes to that. So in Toledo, a couple of things are happening. You've heard a whole bunch of great stuff from Dave, but there's also something else that's exciting that's happening. So the Jeep factory in Toledo, which has always produced the Wrangler, and a couple of other Jeeps. Right now, as you are sitting here, the Jeep factory is in fact producing electric Jeeps. So that's really exciting for us in Toledo. Right now, they are hybrid vehicles. So what you can buy, if you go online, last week there were like 2 or 3 left in the whole Cleveland area. You can buy a hybrid Jeep that the first, I think it's about 35 miles, is electric. Guess why it's always 35 miles? Because that's how much the average American drives in an average day. So that most of your miles are on an electric engine. Electric motor. There's no such thing as an electric engine. So that's happening there. Eventually that will switch over to, there's another hybrid with longer range that's just been announced. And then eventually there is the Jeep Magneto, which is the 100% electric powered Jeep. And that will all be happening right in Toledo. So that's our present and our future. But believe it or not, Toledo has a past with electric cars. In fact, people think electric cars are new, and they're not. So the topic really here is there's nothing new under the sun. Of course, there's no Face ID on this right now. There we go. So the basic ideas behind electric cars really aren't new. In fact, it's not even close to being new. Electric cars were produced over 100 years ago. 100 years ago, we were producing electric cars. Cities like Toledo actually had 2 electric car companies. One was the Milburn Wagon Company, the other one was the Ohio Electric Company. Detroit also had one. They actually probably had a couple, but that one survived longer than any other electric car company in the entire United States. That made it to 1939. So these things have been around. And then if you're old enough, not that any of you are, but I remember the 70s, I was a little kid, and that's when I caught on to the electric car thing. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, but then I also thought that the Jetsons was an electric car. It's not. There's a little poof of smoke that comes out the back of it, which was really disappointing for me once I figured that out in my 40s. So, in fact, back in the 19-teens, over 300 companies made electric cars. For those of you that are electric car fans and paying attention, does that sound kind of familiar now? There's a new electric car company every single week. Around the world, there is a new electric car company every single week. They want to be the next Tesla. They want to be the next Leaf. They want to be the next i3. They want to be the next electric car company. They're all over the place. And every single one of those either ended or was bought out by the big automotive companies. See, that's a little precursor to where the story is going. Some of them assembled a single prototype, others made thousands of vehicles. 2 of them were in Toledo. The merits of electric cars remain up for debate today, but it is, in fact, the same technology that we're dealing with. So, plug-in battery packs. In other words, you know, it's like that. It's the idea that when you're talking to your old dad, because I have one, and he's like, well, why can't they just make battery packs that drop out of the bottom and roll away? Okay, well, there are companies that are looking into that. Because then I don't have to sit over there for 4 hours and charge my car. I just go someplace, battery pack drops out, boop, on the road. Guess what? They had that in the 19-teens. In fact, the Milburn Electric Wagon, which was one of Toledo's, the big one in Toledo, actually you would rent a battery pack for $1. $1 gave you a brand new charge, and they would just roll it. I think it got rolled in, it came up on a platform and it rolled underneath the car. There was a slot for it. Gas and electric hybrids had those in the 19-teens too. And regenerative braking, so if you don't know what that is, that's when you stop. If you're a Prius driver, you have it. So that's when you press the brake and that energy goes back into the car and supposedly saves you so much energy. It really doesn't, but we'll pretend like it does. But they had that in the 19 teens too. So we think we're all high and mighty and so advanced and so high tech, and all of this was going on 100 years ago, 100 years ago. So in a time when 8% of the population had electricity, electric cars were actually big. That's 8% of the population. That's all that had it, and electric cars were there. So it was electric, and it was steam, and it was gas, and nobody knew who was really going to win this race. The electricity increased. In 1920, it was about 34% of homes. But it still was a technology that most people didn't have access to. You know, we think of internet now. If we think of internet 10 years ago, 34% of people were probably about all that had internet. A lot of people didn't have it. So in the early days of motoring, we were kind of looking to see who was going to work. And for a while, it really was anybody's guess. But ultimately, gasoline won out. And there are a couple reasons for that. You could bring gasoline with you. So on longer trips, you'd pack a gas can and you could go a little bit further. Also, the other big, huge difference is, I'm skipping ahead, I'm skipping all over. So I might have to just guess. Oh, here it is. So a new Milburn electric wagon was somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 in 1916. It's a lot of money. A Model T was $400. Which technology is going to win? The Model T. In fact, there were electric Model Ts to start out with. And you had the charger on the wall in your garage, just like we do now, 100 years ago. The Ohio Electric Company was actually more expensive. Their cars ranged from $2,300 to $3,200. They only made a total of 650 vehicles in the 8 years that they were around. Milburn made the better part of about 5,000. So you see this, and you see that this is all kind of contemporary issues that we're dealing with. Detroit Electric sold a lot of cars and sold them through 1939. So they actually sold them through the First World War. What was happening with the First World War actually kind of killed almost every single electric company because steel and all of that needed to go towards war efforts. And it killed, it had a huge effect on the automotive industry. And so things changed in the 1960s. You know, we were still in the Cold War, but we weren't sort of actively fighting these big world wars that took up steel and power and all of this kind of stuff, and created a demand for vehicles. You're not going to charge a vehicle on the beaches of Normandy. Electric technology wouldn't have worked in wartime at all. So you needed something, and those are all kinds of things that created the gas need for a gas engine. But in the 60s, we started to think about the environment a little bit and what was happening, or at least a small group of people did. You started to see big automotive companies play around with electric technology. There were some electric cars on the road then. The 70s brought more of that around, and including it was BMW's first electric car. But electricity really didn't get serious until the 1990s. And there's an interesting story there. You may remember, what's the movie about GM and how the gas industry and everybody throttled them? I'm thinking it's Jump, but it's not. So there's a movie out there, for those of you that like to watch old movies on documentaries. So GM started to get very serious in the 1990s about electric vehicles. It's no surprise you see them leading electric vehicles today. They got very serious about it, and they deliberately got sabotaged by other automotive makers that did not want electric technology, and by gas companies and all kinds of other people that really went in and just obliterated things and destroyed things. So then we come up into, 2007, when GM got back again. GM started doing their thing, and all of this is really happening in the vicinity of Toledo. So Toledo, if you're not from there, and Detroit, we're kind of like the stepsister in the automotive industry. So what I haven't mentioned so far is, so Milburn Electric Wagon, his daughter married a Studebaker. You know that name, don't you? Studebaker tried to make some vehicles. Milburn actually made the shells for Studebaker cars for a while. Oh, and then there were two boys, what was their last name? Dodge. The Dodge brothers, who actually were in Toledo. They also were a part of the Milburn Electric Factory, and they were on the board of directors and bought pieces and parts that would get peeled off at different times. So what's happening now isn't new. It isn't at all. It's the same thing, and oddly, it's the same problems. So the Milburn Electric Wagon had a range of 80 miles. Actually, I think it was 75, going around 23, 24 miles an hour. My first i3 had a range of 80 miles. So it's fun that we're dealing with all this, and we're dealing with it, and we're going forward in a way that really can't be stopped. So like those of us that were in electric cars, past 4 years were a little weird because whether you love them or hate them, obviously the president at that time did not like electric cars. But the thing that we actually knew was, okay, well, guess what? You put all the automotive makers together, they're bigger than any one president. They are worldwide companies. So we knew it might slow up a little bit, and it did, but now it's just full stream forward with electric technology. So the story of the Milburn Wagon, Toledo, in sort of the bedroom community of Detroit in many ways. In the end, it was bought out by GM. GM always had an interest in it. They were making bodies for GM, and they were hired to make, get this, the brand new Buick bodies. When Buick became a car, those bodies were being made on Monroe Street in Toledo. Well, no, it was kind of more like Auburn in Toledo, because one of the things that always happened is Milburn always had fires and explosions all the time. I mean, we have to remember this is why we have unions, because these places were inherently not safe at all. So that's what happened. And so eventually GM's like, well, we want to have exclusive rights to your factory to build our car shells. And before, they were making car shells for 5 or 6 different automotive companies. And you also see that happen now. Now that automotives were going to be a big thing, there's no company that's making any part for a whole bunch of different people. Like there's the Maumee stamping plant in Toledo. Used to be exclusively Ford. Actually, that plant exclusively now makes body panels for the Tesla. They don't make them for Dodge. They don't make them for anybody else. You have exclusiveness because of the potential for corporate espionage. So GM said, hey, we're going to take this over. Here's a whole bunch of money. Milburn had died a long time before, and the other guys, you know, the Dodge brothers were off doing their thing, and everybody kind of got interested in their own other businesses. So they're like, yeah, sure, we'll take the money. And they're like, oh, this is going to be great. You know, it's going to be still going to be here. It's going to be a great factory. They closed it in a year. All they wanted was to close it out and get it off of the marketplace so that they could produce the bodies up in Detroit and have exclusive jurisdiction or exclusive control over what they were doing. And that was also a part of the end of the electric boom in the 19-teens. And that was companies wanted their own stuff. The bigger companies came in and bought out the smaller companies. You're going to see this happening. You're going to see this happening with all these electric cars. They're going to get bought out. GM's going to buy this person out, and everybody will get bought out. And then within a year, oh, we don't make those anymore. So it's a matter of just buying out the brand in the marketplace. So that's a little bit of history, which is also part of our present here with electric cars. I don't know if it's a Q&A thing, but if you have questions, you can ask, or you can cut the video. Hey, I didn't say hi to the live stream people. Hi, live stream people. Sorry. You're my afterthought at this point, aren't you? Anyway, I'm going to close out because I could just talk like this for forever, and you look bored as hell. So, any questions? Anything? Good. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing your space, as we now say these days.
We're very, very happy to have you. I think one of the things we've all learned today is that the collaborative process really gets the best results. So whether it's here in the city of Oberlin, whether it's in Lorain County, whether it's for the region, whether it's for Northern Ohio. It's really been a pleasure to have everyone here. Really appreciate everyone's time, both everyone watching the live stream or the recording later. Everyone who participated today, really appreciate you coming out and sharing your stories with us. Hopefully inspiring, our generation and the next generation to continue this work. Scott, do you want to maybe just give a preview of what's coming up in the tour?
Sure.
And close us out? Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And I'll give my thanks to all the presenters today. A wonderful set of presentations. Really appreciate that. So for the rest of the tour, today we are headed back to Worcester at the Ohio Agricultural Research and Development Center, where the GEO board president, Dale Arnold, who is the Director of Public Policy for the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, will be talking about the electrification of the agricultural sector and agricultural equipment. Tomorrow we will be at Carillon Park in Dayton, next to the University of Dayton, where we will be having an EV rally, as well as presentations by Mayor Nan Whaley, the city manager, and the sustainability manager from the city of Dayton. We'll be going to St. Clair Community College to talk to their Tesla training program and the coordinator of their Tesla training program. We'll be headed to the Cincinnati Zoo later that day, tomorrow. And we will have Chevrolet will be in attendance and showing off the new Chevy Bolt, as well as some EV efforts that are going on in the city of Cincinnati. We'll have a reception tomorrow night. We'll be in Athens, where the city of Logan has purchased 3 Tesla 3s for their police department. And so the mayor will be talking a little bit about why they chose Teslas for their police vehicles. And we'll be talking to Mayor Steve Patterson in Athens Thursday afternoon about sustainability efforts in electric vehicle electrification in the city of Athens, and a microgrid project that they're installing. And then we'll be closing out the week in Columbus. We'll be at the Ohio State University's Center for Automotive Research, which is changing from internal combustion engine to EV and automated vehicle technology, as well as Yellow Cab, which is electrifying their entire fleet of cabs in Columbus. And we'll be wrapping up the entire week's activities, and take a breath here, and say at the Smart Columbus Experience Center. For those of you who are kind of in this space, many of you know that the city of Columbus won a very large $40 million grant several years ago around autonomous and connected vehicles and vehicle electrification. And so we'll be ending at the Smart Columbus Experience Center with a reception in the afternoon on Friday. Those of you who are on the live stream, those of you who are in attendance, you are all welcome to attend. Please come and join us as we wrap up the entire week's events. So you can tell we have a very comprehensive set of speakers, a very comprehensive set of stops. We're really trying to uplift all aspects of vehicle electrification and how this is changing not just the social fabric, but also the economic fabric and also the environmental and energy fabric of the state of Ohio. So we really think that this is not just a flash in the pan. We really feel like this is something that's here to stay, and we really appreciate those of you who share in this vision and joining us and trying to advocate for better policies, better public policy, as well as economic conditions that will incentivize these markets. So thank you so much for joining us, and those of you on the live stream, thank you for joining us as well. And if you are not, this is my shameless pitch as a board member. I have to tell you, we are a membership-based, GEO is a membership-based organization. So if you're not a member of Green Energy Ohio, we certainly encourage you to join. Go on to our website, there's membership forms online. You can swipe your credit card, it's very simple and painless. We also have, for those in attendance, we have applications here that you can fill out, and please join us. The organization, the membership really drives the mission of this organization. We really listen very strongly to our members. We take it to heart, and we try to advocate for the best public policy, the best economic conditions we possibly can for the state of Ohio. And as a membership-based organization, we are very close to our members. So join us, help amplify our collective voices. We've talked about that several times today, and the importance of that, and that's really, really what is at the heart of Green Energy Ohio. So once again, thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
That last part was like a PBS
Yeah,
membership drive.
I listened
It was
to it enough,
lovely.
so I've learned my personal tricks.